We just heard from the acting commissioner of the DOT that we're waiting for a legislative proposal. Is there a proposal coming? And with the governor's budget address coming up, do you expect to hear anything from the governor on the Transportation Trust Fund?
I would have liked to have heard something in the state of the state, because actually that's a big component of everything we do moving forward. I would hope that we talk about it. The Senate President and I and the leaders also have been in conversations of potentially some type of negotiations that we can to do some type of potential tax fairness to be able to get this done, because obviously you'll need a revenue stream. But again, there's one cog that's missing, and that's the governor. And until we get all of us together in one room, then we can hash something out. We can roll something out. We don't want to just go and say this is Steve Sweeney's plan, or Vinnie Prieto's, or John Bramnick's, or Tom Kane's proposal. We want to do something that works. I've said to everybody, we need to do something that is going to work for the state of New Jersey, and we all collectively should be able to agree on that beforehand. So everybody, as I've said many times, we all jump off the cliff together and do it right. So hopefully that's something we have to do, and by June 30th, it has to be done. And I'm sure that the governor will be willing to figure out the compromise. Now, we obviously have our thoughts, and then we'll see where we are, and hopefully we'll get to somewhere in the middle. And that's exactly what I've been talking about, because obviously we have a high property tax problem in the state of New Jersey. When you talk about that, 64% of the roads, as the Senate President was talking about, is in municipalities, and we sent last year or so, was about 264 million. When we have talked about doubling that, or somewhere near 400 million, that is crucial that we get this done, because if you don't have that money, it is a direct tax hike. To talk about also in roads coming from the municipal side, I do share your pain about utilities and when they dig up roads. And and I know locally, a lot of municipalities, and that I've worked for, we either put an amount of moratorium when it's a new surface road, that you actually talk to all the utilities before you do these roads, and you either do 5 years or whatever that is, 10 years, so they do any upgrades. And then always the street opening permits, you have to have the right people in place to make sure that the backfill is probably the first defense to make sure that they get resurfaced good. So there is a lot of oversight that needs to be done, so and that way to maximize the length of the lifetime of those roads.
Realistically, when are we going to hear some more detail? When are we going to really...
I guess my only one fault is that I have a great memory. So, and that's the thing. Actually, Senate President is correct. John, you did say that $1 billion from education, and actually it's documented. But forget about that. And we had, at other places, we had talked together, and when people say you can't get anything done in Trenton, you can't do this, we're asking you to be part of the solution. You want us to get it done, then if you want to be not relevant in government, then that's fine. We could do that, and we can then just try and hammer it out with the administration.
Is there going to be money in the budget to accommodate these applications that you're receiving? To some, granted, maybe not 100%, but is there going to be some money?
Yeah, and I'm not going to speak for the Senate President, but actually being the Speaker and a former budget chairman, I would tell you that's why we need to get a plan in place. Once you get the plan in place, you can fund it, and you can have the money there. And we definitely will, and in my opinion, because the other is not an option for all you mayors, because then it would be property tax hikes. But also, just to Senator King, to let you know, in our plan, we actually have all those, to make sure make sure we cut costs. We do a lot of things, private-public partnerships, design build, all those things are part of it, but you can't get there. With that, you can't get there. And that is pie in the sky when you talk about it. You need a revenue stream when we're trying to do the right thing and send to the municipalities. When you talk about the other taxes, the governor went out and said that he wants to repeal the estate tax. We talked about raising the bar, phasing it out. When we talk about those people, you're not talking about the lower echelon, that we're talking about people who are living in poverty. When you talk to all these mayors, I can guarantee you that each and every one of them gets called from people in their municipalities that have problems. Their social services in those towns are tremendously overburdened to try and help these people. So there is, and actually in conversations with John Bramnick, there is sort of two New Jerseys, that you have one of those that you're saying, oh, they leave the state. The other ones can't leave the state. They're here, and that's why they have to be able to live in these towns, and even renters, really property taxes affects them.
Can the legislature realistically do anything to move this issue forward?
Since the decision, I've actually been looking at how we can get this accomplished. I've talked about RCAs in a limited fashion because I think everybody needs affordable housing. And when we talk about affordable housing, people have a misconception. You have children that have grown up in those towns that want to be able to stay in those towns and to be able to afford them. You have to help them. Actually, my daughter, which is a teacher, to be able to stay in the town that she grew up in, very difficult to do, especially up in Mayor Casella. In our neck of the woods, properties are very expensive. So it's very difficult. So we can afford this to people that work in public safety, volunteer firemen, EMS, all those people. We want to be able to keep them in those areas. But you can also send a regional contribution outside, but I would like to see it limited to maybe the county, or so that way it goes to those urban areas near that it actually helps. So it's not that you're sending it from one end of the state to the other. It's actually into that area, or whatever maybe that core region was when it was done. So we need to look at this and not just every time go to the court. So sometimes maybe the advocates like it that way better, but I think it's our responsibility as legislators, and actually have been talking to a lot of mayors, understanding, what their concerns and issues, and seeing how we can make it a doable process. So I think it's a little bit of give and take from both sides. And RCAs, the way it was thought of, oh, you take it all and send it away. No, that's not good. Everybody needs affordable housing wherever you are, but you may not have all the jobs, but so you send that portion to some of those areas that have existing housing stock that could be revitalized, and then put those people in there. And that is part of the component when I've been talking about an initiative of, fighting poverty in New Jersey. Housing is a large component because it's very expensive to live in the state of New Jersey.
Sounds like there is some agreement, at least on the regional contribution issue.
There is, and there was actually one bill that we actually passed, and I don't know what the makeup was in both houses, but it got vetoed just recently, that it was taking foreclosures and doing affordable housing for police and fire, and that didn't go through. So hopefully we can do those priorities, and also prioritizing residents of the towns, number one, so that way it's not just from the region that's open to anybody. Give a certain block to them. So you're right, there is an agreement, and hopefully we can get there. What I understand it, we were getting ready for round 3, where the mayor said that you had your proposal on the table. When this governor came in, it was going to blow up COA. It was taken away, and then that's why we're in the courts now. That's why there was a bill that the Senate president talked about that was vetoed. So we, I think, have, as a legislature, an obligation, because now you're going to be relying on the courts of what affordable housing is. And I know each and every one of the mayors sitting out there have that concern. So we should try to get somewhere. But that's why, if you were already had enough round 2 and we're ready for round 3, then you're nowhere now. And that's the problem.
Over the next year, what should we expect on I mean, it's really 2 issues. It's health benefits and it's pension funding, but we'll start with pension funding.
When you talk about that, in 2011, it was touted of saving $120 billion over the next 30 years, and it was done. That's great, but there was one other component. You had to pay into it. If you didn't, that was the problem. Did we have a bad turn in the economy? Absolutely. Did we bounce back like other states around us? No, we didn't. So we have a problem, and that's why in the ballot question, it's incorporated something that I had been looking at to phase it out over another 5 years, sort of spread it out to make it doable. And the Senate president is correct. The first year 1 is identical to the payment of the governor. So it's those same amounts. So there's not that hysteria that taxes are going to go up. So we're trying to to do this. When we talk about the reforms, why weren't they acceptable? Part of that, the Senate President is correct. You're going to take savings from people that are paying it in municipalities. Now they should be able to take advantage of that if that was going to be the case, not to bail out the state. But also, part of that was they were going to freeze those pensions also. We already did for new hires, so there's a misconception that this only affected the future. It did not. It affected the current employees, people that had been 15 years into, 18 years into a career. Now they were going to be shut down, and that was going to be a problem because these employees, some of them that I know personally, about somebody 17 years ago started at $11,000, and they took that job because it would have a little pension at the end of the day and it had some health benefits. Guess what? That was, if you think of it, and that's gross, I'm not talking about net pay. So that is not fair to those individuals that vested their time into these careers, and then now the rug was going to be pulled down from them for many years of things that we have not done. When I can go back into the late 90s into borrowing that was dumped into the pension, then it crashed, and we're still paying for that until like 2028.